So our two guest speakers today come from a powerhouse organization called Swing 31st Street Swing Left. They formed into 2017, apparently in the Washington, D.C. living room of someone who lives on 31st Street in Washington, and thus the name. And this organization I've known about for a long time just because they're a sister swing left chapter, but mostly because they are one of the biggest, most active, most organized, most effective of the swing left groups. And canvassing and fundraising are their two major pursuits, although they do a lot of other stuff as well. So the two people we're going to be hearing from, one is Mary Pence, who's a retired family law attorney, but now is super involved with 31st Street Swing Left. She chairs the fundraising group, and she is a very experienced canvasser, I understand, from way back in the 1970s when she was in Ann Arbor. So yeah, I think we can maybe learn a few lessons from someone who's been canvassing that long. And Michelle Hainbach is also an active member and leader in 31st Street Swing Left. And she mentioned that her earliest political memory is that her mother ran for a citywide office, and she went with her mother to the election board to watch the votes being counted and sort of got hooked that early on. But she also became active in her Swing Left chapter in 2017, like a lot of us did. She's canvassed in Virginia and Pennsylvania and actually leads the Pennsylvania team right now. And she's also organized and hosted phone banks and text banks and letter writing sessions, but she says what she finds most rewarding is canvassing. So I think without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Mary and Michelle.
Thank you, Wendy. And to paraphrase Kamala Harris, we are going to get right down to business. I do want to tell you that I'm going to send the link of our PowerPoint to Wendy so she can send the PowerPoint to you all in addition to the recording. So let me try to share my screen. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So here are our email addresses, but if for some reason you can't write them down fast enough, when you get this PowerPoint link, you'll have our email addresses, and please feel free to contact us. I also put the website address in in the chat. So if you want to look at our website, it's there in the chat. And again, this is paraphrasing Michelle Obama, who I thought was just awesome. And that's why you all are here tonight, because you're not going to just sit around and complain, but you're going to do something. Okay, Michelle, you're going to start us off. Michelle?
Sorry about that, everybody. And go ahead and you can put up the first bullet, Mary. Go ahead. Thank you. So the reason you want to canvass, in addition to perhaps writing postcards and letters and doing phone banking, is that research shows that a face-to-face conversation is the most effective way to connect with the voter. It will be one of many contacts that hopefully the voter will have regarding the election. Canvassing provides voters with the information they need to vote and the motivation to overcome challenges.
And canvassing also has a very positive impact on the campaign. It promotes name recognition of the candidate. It helps campaigns clean up their voter lists for GOTV and even for coming years. It's an opportunity to recruit volunteers and to get yard signs posted. And it's a chance to register potential new voters, either in this particular household or in the neighborhood.
Canvassing also has a positive impact on us. Is that right?
On us, yeah, on us, the volunteers.
Yes, canvassing has a positive impact on us. We have the opportunity to meet our fellow citizens who have lives and circumstances very different from our own.
And this is really incredible. We do a lot of canvassing in Pennsylvania, and I'm thinking of the far western part of Pennsylvania, Connor Lamb's district. This is on the border of the state, and it's really Appalachia. And just an amazing eye-opener to be knocking on doors and talking to people whose lives are so different from ours. And I want to take just 1 second to tell you about a man. He had been laid off from the steel mills 30 years before, and he hadn't worked in 30 years. When I asked him what issues he was concerned about, he said, "The water running by the side of my house." The water, his land was being eroded. That's how fundamental his concern was. Anyway, that's just one story that stuck with me. That was from 2018, so it's a long time that stuck with me.
Yeah, another additional advantage for canvassing is that we develop community and an esprit de corps within our own canvassing group. When you spend several hours together with people with a shared mission, bonds develop. And especially now in our post-COVID time, when so many of our meetings are like this via Zoom, it's a real pleasure to be out with people during the day.
And we improve our own communication skills, which carries over to when we're talking about family, friends, and neighbors who may have political views which are very different from our own.
And we experience the satisfaction of making a difference. No matter how hot and tired and sweaty I am after a day of canvassing, I always come home feeling like I've done something, and I've done something good. And that's just so important.
Okay, so now that we've got you all revved up, we're going to talk about technique. So the first thing I want you to think about is you're at the door, you haven't rung the doorbell yet. And so these are the things you need to do before you even ring the doorbell. First is you're going to have an app on your phone called Minivan, and you're going to click on the particular address and street that you're at, and that Minivan app is going to tell you the name or names, the gender, the age, and the voter ID, and then how many voters there are at this particular door. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is look at your Minivan and kind of orient yourself mentally. Okay, now who is it I'm going to be talking to?
You're going to check the area around the door for clues: children's toys, veterans decals, bumper stickers on cars, landscaping, and gardening can give you some ways to perhaps break the ice as the person comes to the door.
You're going to have a piece of literature in your hand.
And you don't want to put answers into the Minivan. The app has a survey on it, and you're supposed to you will record information based on your conversation, but you don't want to do that while you're in conversation with the person. Wait till you're done and you've said goodbye and the door is closed and you've walked a few steps away from the person's front door, and then you can put your information in before you go to the next door.
Okay. So now you've got yourself oriented. Oh, you know what, Michelle? I think these are coming up in the wrong order. Technological problems. So after you've gotten yourself oriented, the first thing you're going to do is think about how you're going to connect with this person who opens the door. So number one is your body language. A smile is critical. And, I'm trying to show this with my body. There's a kind of a closed body posture, and there's an open and welcoming body posture. You're going to make eye contact, and when it's appropriate, you're going to nod your head. All these are things that help you connect with the person whose door you are at.
You want to answer that when the door opens, you want to identify yourself and make sure that you're speaking to the person whose name is in your minivan app. You can say, hello, I'm Michelle. I'm here with the local Dems. Are you Janice Smith, or is Janice at home?
And Michelle kind of put these together. They can be in either order. But once I know it's Janice Smith, I'm going to say, hi, my name's Mary. I'm a volunteer with the Democratic Party. We're here in the neighborhood canvassing for Janelle Stelson. And then Michelle hit it on this one.
Okay. You want to engage the individual at the door, and you want to try to be able to size up the person that you're speaking with. So you ask an open-ended question, such as, have you been following the election? Are you familiar with Janelle? Are you a pretty regular voter, or just sometimes? What do you consider when thinking about who to vote for in November? Those are the type of questions that hopefully will elicit an answer.
And you can do something different, but the point is for it to be open-ended. And I'll just say, I almost always use, have you been following the election? Unless there's something that gives me a cue that I should ask something else. It might be a bumper sticker, for example. But that just happens to be my favorite open-ended question. Okay, so you've introduced yourself. First of all, you've made sure who you're talking to. You've introduced yourself. You've asked your open-ended question. And the answer to that open-ended question is going to enable you to categorize this person who's opened their door into one of three categories.
Are you speaking with a solid Dem? Is this a person who nods and smiles and says, yes, they always vote Democrat? If that's the case, then what you want to do is see if they have a plan to vote. Research shows that when a person can articulate their plan, they're more likely to follow through with it. So you can ask, will this person be voting in person or through the mail? What time of day will they go to vote? You can also ask if this person would be interested in volunteering or posting a yard sign. People may be hesitant to do either of those, but we do get great success with this third ask. Please let your family and friends know about this conversation. Tell people we came to your door and tell them about the candidate. Would you be willing to do that? And people will generally say yes to that. And that, in this case, with this type of conversation, we want to close the deal by asking, do we have a deal? And confirm the voting plan and that they're voting Democratic. Sometimes some people like to do a high five, or in this day of COVID cautiousness, put out their elbow for an elbow bump.
Okay, the second category that you might find you're talking to based on the response to the open-ended question is a swing voter. And the app in minivan might identify this person as a lean Democrat, a lean Republican, or an independent. And often this voter will say, I don't know if I would say often, but sometimes this voter will say something like, well, I don't vote for the party, I vote for the candidate. And if you have this person, your job is to persuade them. So you want to identify an issue or two that they care about, connect the candidate to that issue, maybe something about your own experience. You need to have just a nugget for 2 or 3 issues, and you may or may not be able to see an impact from this approach, this conversation. But know that what you put in the minivan will cause the campaign to contact them again. They will know this is somebody to come back to in another format or in another way.
The third type of voter that you might encounter is what we call low propensity Democrat. And this is one of the most important groups for us. And this is one of the reasons why we canvass. A low propensity Dem is somebody who, if they vote, will likely vote Democrat. But the challenge is to get them to actually vote, to go to the polls or to complete a mail-in ballot. So our job is to motivate this person. People need to know that their vote counts, that races are being decided by just sometimes several hundred votes, sometimes less for a local election. And this is where these open-ended questions that Mary mentioned earlier can really help elicit some interaction with the voter. What issues matter to you? What will you be thinking about when you go to vote? It helps to have a nugget, a short bullet point in your mind on a couple of key issues. I always like to talk about public school education. It's something that's near and dear to me. So I'll have a nugget on what the candidate thinks about that, or perhaps infrastructure or the economy, which is front and center for a lot of people these days. You don't need to have a lot of depth to the and knowledge of policy issues, just a short bullet point. You can also then tell the person where they vote and ask them again, can they make a plan to vote? And then going back to some of the points that we mentioned for the first voter, the solid Democrat.
So now we want to hit on some overall points about canvassing. And I think this is perhaps the most important one. Be yourself, develop your own style and voice. Use words and an approach that's, kind of who you really are. And I personally think that being genuine is more important than being able to rattle off a lot of facts and a lot of data. And it won't take you that long to develop that style. Most likely, as Take Action San Diego is organizing canvassing, they will pair experienced canvassers with beginners at the very beginning. And so you'll have a chance to go to 2 or 3 or 4 doors with somebody else and kind of get your feet wet. And then you'll be solo. And it won't take you, I swear, it won't take you more than 3 or 4 doors by yourself to hit your stride, to kind of get who it is, what it is you're trying to communicate, and then you'll be golden.
Take your time. When a person answers the door and is willing to have a conversation with you, you want to make the most of it. Surely there will be times when you can read a person's body language and they just want to close the door. So you have to think about that. And maybe you just leave the literature and say, we'll come back another time. But if a person is willing to talk to you, take the time to make the most of it.
Initiate conversations with people that you run into on the street or in the hallway if you're in an apartment building. Don't just limit yourself to the names that are on your minivan list. You won't be able to put data into the minivan app as a result of those conversations, but sometimes those conversations are the most productive that you will have. So don't let those opportunities slip by you.
And also, just to add a point to what Mary said, that if you do have a productive conversation with somebody on the street who isn't in the minivan app, you can, and they want to volunteer, or they'd say they want a yard sign for their house, which is around the corner. Write down the name and the address, the cell phone number, whatever's pertinent, and you can email or text that to the campaign staff, and they will follow up. So it's not like that the person's lost. You can record that information and get it in. I also want to address the concern that you're going to encounter somebody who's threatening or belligerent. It very, very rarely happens. Most likely people thank you for coming out. They recognize that you're doing something that perhaps they don't want to do on a hot day. And often people have thanked me, and I've gotten people saying, have a blessed day as I'm leaving. Yes, there have been Republicans sometimes on the other side of the door, or even MAGA type Republicans. But even then, nobody gets angry in person. Perhaps they might do it on social media, but in person, we just sort of nod and acknowledge that it's not the place for a conversation, and we say goodbye. I want to remind you that, like anything else, this takes practice. You will get better. So at the end of the day, pat yourself on the back for doing something good for democracy.
Okay, so now Michelle and I are going to do 3 role plays, and I'm going to go back to this slide, which I think is, if you can develop the ability to distinguish between these 3 different categories and adapt what you say to who it is you're talking to, that's really a core skill of canvassing. So Michelle and I are going to do 3 role plays. We're not going to tell you which of these 3 we're doing. So be watching for signs or indicators that tell you which one of these voters we're talking to. Okay, I'm gonna do the first one. Knock, knock.
Hello,
Hi, are you Michelle?
I am, and you are?
So my name's Mary. I'm a volunteer with the local Democratic Party, and I'm here in the neighborhood canvassing for Michelle Stelson, who's running for Congress. Have you heard of Janelle?
No, no, I can't say I have.
Well, she's a local reporter. She retired from journalism in order to run for Congress. She's You know, I'm putting my hand here because I'm really speaking from my heart. She represents the best of what we're looking for in Democratic Party candidates because she genuinely cares about the people of her district. I
Oh,
can tell you that she would be a huge change from the very disappointing person who's currently representing our district.
well, that sounds good. I mean, and actually, I think maybe I do recognize her. Did she used to be a reporter? The picture looks
Yes.
familiar.
Yes,
Yeah.
she was a reporter and she retired from that job in order to run for Congress and represent us. Just
Oh,
think what
okay.
a sacrifice she's making.
Okay. Well, that sounds good.
So are you thinking that you might have a positive reaction to her candidacy?
Yeah, yeah, I think I would. Yeah.
Oh,
I certainly
Is
don't like the guy who's in there now. I don't want him coming back.
well, we can agree on that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tell me, do you know where your polling place is?
Yeah, I think it's the middle school around this corner.
Yeah, and how do you tend to vote at the beginning of the day or the end of the day?
I
What's your
usually drop my
plan?
kids off at school and then I continue on my way to the polls. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Since you know Janelle a little bit as a reporter, is there any chance you would be willing to volunteer for her?
No, I don't have time for that.
How about a yard sign?
Maybe. I have to think about it. Not sure.
Okay. Well, are there people that you could talk about? Of course, I want you to read about her and her positions, and her website is on the piece of literature. But are there people that you could share your
Yeah,
views
yeah.
with?
Yeah, I usually my mother usually comes with me to vote, so I'll definitely talk to her and my brother and sister-in-law. Yeah, yeah.
Dale, it's really been a pleasure meeting you.
Okay.
I appreciate your support for Janelle, and do reach out to the campaign if there are questions you have that
Okay.
can be answered. And what shall we do about the fact that you're thinking about taking a yard sign? Would you want to give me I'll tell you what, how about if I give you my cell phone number, and if you decide you'll take a yard sign, you call me, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
All
here
right,
it
will do.
is.
All righty.
All right,
Thank
have
you.
a great day.
You
Take
too. Bye-bye
care.
now. Okay. And we're going to move on to, and also I want to encourage everyone out there, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll take a look in a few minutes. Okay. All right. So now we're going to move on to another role play. Knock, knock.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm here with the local Dems. Is this Mary?
Yeah, I'm Mary, but I am kind of busy right now.
Oh, well, I won't take much of your time. I promise that. I'm here on behalf of Janelle Stelson, who's running to represent us in Congress. Have you heard of Janelle?
Um, I'm not sure, I really I like to do my own research. It's still a little bit early. I'm planning to look into who the candidates are and make up my mind based on really the thing that's most important to me is character.
Okay, okay. Well, that's great. I really respect that you want to do your own research. Here on Janelle's literature that I'm going to leave with you is her website. What issues will be top of your mind as you do research and make your voting decision?
Well, I'll tell you, I like the fact that she's a woman, and I hope that a woman's right to make decisions about her own body
Mhm.
is something that's important to her, because I can tell you it is a very important issue to
Well,
me.
that is important to her. And Janelle will fight hard for women's reproductive choices, for women to make their own decisions and to keep government out of medical offices. Absolutely. I can tell
Well,
you that without a
that's
doubt.
good. That's good to hear.
Okay, all
I'll,
right.
I'll,
Well, I
I'll
hope,
think about her, but
okay,
I want to look at all the candidates
that's
before I
fine,
make
that's
up my
fine. I
mind.
understand that. All right, well, I'll leave you with the literature and you have a good day.
Okay, nice to meet you.
All righty, bye-bye now. Okay, now we're gonna move on to our third role play, final one. Um, uh,
Could you
let's-
hear that?
Yes, sorry. So Mary, are you the vote? I'm the voter this time, so you're gonna knock on the door.
Yeah. Ding dong.
Hello.
Hi. Are you Michelle?
Yes, I am.
So my name's Mary. I'm a volunteer with the Democratic Party, and I'm here in the neighborhood canvassing for Michelle Stelson, who's running for Congress. Have you heard of Janelle?
No, I haven't heard of her.
Okay, well, that's honest. I appreciate that. Can you tell me, when you're thinking about the election, what are the concerns that you have or the criteria that might play a role for you in deciding who you're gonna vote for?
Well, the economy, absolutely, totally the economy. Prices keep going up and I'm struggling to pay the rent and feed myself and my kids with the same paycheck. It's just, yeah, people keep saying, like, sometimes I hear people saying, oh, it's getting better, it's getting better. Well, it's not getting better here, I tell you that.
I hear you. And, I want to just indicate that economic issues are the ones that really have to be addressed on the federal level. And I think if you vote for Janelle, and she is elected to Congress, you can count on her to work on the pocketbook issues. If you heard any of the Democratic convention, you know that was something that Kamala Harris really stressed, the need to focus on middle class citizens here in the United States and their issues, and certainly some of the most pressing issues are economic. But I wanted to mention one other thing to you. You said you have kids, and
Yeah, yeah.
I just wonder if being a role model for your kids in terms of taking your responsibility of voting as a citizen is something that's important to you.
Yeah, I guess that does make sense. Yeah, I'll think about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All
And
right.
then just lastly, I wanted to let you know that these races these days are being decided by really narrow margins.
Yeah.
Some of them, like 80 votes, 100 votes, it's really astonishing. So I just want to, make sure you know that your vote does make a difference.
Okay.
Your vote does
All right.
count.
Okay, well, all righty. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is just take care of a housekeeping detail, and then we're going to answer questions. Here is the
If you'd like, Mary, when it comes to the questions, I could read them out loud, some of them. And
okay. But here's my housekeeping detail or our request. Would you please, each of you on this call, send an email to Wendy Gletner. I probably pronounced that wrong, Wendy. And tell her that you would rate this training 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being, I'll say, excellent. And then anything that you think we could have done to make this a presentation that would be more helpful for you. So just 2 questions. How do you rate it, and what would be more helpful? So Wendy, if you would, let's see, I guess I have to stop sharing. Let me stop sharing so we can see everybody there. Okay, you're going to read the questions from the chat?
Sure, and I encourage other people to put questions in now because we have a few minutes to take them. Right, Wendy, we have a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one question that comes up, Mary, is what are the most effective times to canvass? And I would add, what are the most effective days too?
Okay, well, that's a really interesting question. We canvass on Saturdays, and we generally arrive at the campaign site at 10 o'clock in the morning. It takes a little while to get your turf, blah, 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 with the idea that you'll start hitting doors about 10:40, 10:45. You really don't want to go any earlier than that. And we usually, of course, we have a 2-hour drive home from Harrisburg, so we'll usually be on the road back home by, say, 3. So Saturdays and Sundays a little bit later on are very effective. At the very end of the campaign cycle, the very last week, we'll do GOTV, get out the vote, every day. And the other thing I wanted to mention is a lot of the caucuses, like I'm speaking particularly of 2 that I know about right now, Michigan and Wisconsin, the caucuses for the state legislature, when they are recruiting candidates to run for the state legislature seats, and they are guaranteeing a certain level of funding for those campaigns, they ask for a commitment in return of 20 hours a week of canvassing by the candidate, because that is the most effective contact with the voters, having the candidate themselves come to the door. And I imagine in order to get their 20 hours in, they have to do every weekday, say from dinner hour until it's starting to get dark, and then Saturdays and Sundays.
I also just want to add, when people talk about the timing, when's the best time to canvass? I want to say that seasonally, now is the time to go out. Don't wait till mid-October, because first of all, people in many states, depending on where you are, early voting starts a full month before Election Day. And so, people have already made up their mind and have voted. And the other thing is, the closer you get to Election Day, the more people are likely to might be annoyed at the number of phone calls, texts, and knocks on the doors. If you go now, it's still kind of new and novel, and people haven't been out there yet, so you're more likely to find people willing to engage. All right, I'm going to move on to another question, Mary, and this does come up. People want to know, how do you have my name? Why is my name on your list?
That is a good question, although it doesn't come up very often. But what I'll say is, this is a voter registration list maintained by the registrar of your county. So this is a public document available from the county registrar. I did once, only once in all the times I've canvassed. I had the wife's name, I rang the doorbell, the husband came to the door, and I said, is Sue at home? And he said, who are you? I told him who I was. And he said, how do you have my wife's name? Take my wife's name off your list. But that only happened to me once in all the times that I've canvassed.
Okay, another question. Oh, go ahead.
No.
Another question that's come up, and is, what percentage of people actually come to the door? How many people do you actually talk to?
Good question. So a typical turf will be about 40 to 50 doors, and it will generally take you about 2 hours to do a turf. Some days we'll do 2 turfs in one day. Do a turf, take a break for lunch, and then do another one in the afternoon. If for a turf of 50 doors, if I've had 5 good conversations, I consider that a good day. How about you, Michelle? What would you say?
Well, and also I want to tell people that in terms of how many doors you can accomplish, it really varies in terms of the type of neighborhood you're in. We like to do what we call high density neighborhoods, apartment buildings or single family homes that are close together, townhouses. So you're really not walking as far and you're knocking on a lot of doors. And the last few times I've been out, when I've been out this summer in Pennsylvania, we've had a lot of conversations. I'm going to say out of maybe 50 doors, 15 to 20 people are answering the door. Now, that may include some Republicans, and it may include some people who I'm not talking to the person on the list, I'm talking to their spouse, but I'm still having a good conversation. So I've gotten more people home this time. I don't know why, but yeah. So you never know. Every day's different, and sometimes you're out with a friend and they're on a different block than you, and you're having 2 totally different experiences. That just is what happens. So let me see. There's another question here. What happens if a lot of people can't answer the door, gated buildings and stuff? And that was my experience last time. Well, that's an issue to bring up with the campaign. The staff who are giving you the turfs, they need to know that that's a gated neighborhood and you can't access it, and they need to take that off the list and reach those people through phone calls and give you different lists. We are not soliciting, by the way. When you see no soliciting signs, that does not mean you cannot knock on the doors. Talking to people about voting is not soliciting. And I see that there are a lot of questions about your local campuses in San Diego, and Wendy is answering some of them in the chat, and I'm sure we'll address them more in the meeting in a few minutes. But someone else does ask, are there opportunities to speak to people at events? I think you mean like farmers markets, perhaps, or like a Labor Day parade, perhaps. That often is not as successful because you don't know who you're talking to. You can't record it. I do know sometimes that like a local Democratic Party or like the League of Women Voters, groups like that may have stands and be at those events. Mary, do you have a response to that?
Just to say that those venues are better for trying to register voters, because anybody who comes along who's not registered, it doesn't matter where they live, if you can get them registered or give them the means to register, then that's a successful encounter.
Okay, and I have one last question. Wendy, the question is, do you canvass in neighborhoods where there are many non-native English speakers, and how do you converse? Well, I can answer that. Where we're going in Pennsylvania and Virginia, there are a good number of immigrant communities. There are a good number of people who have come here from somewhere else. But generally speaking, I find that most people, if they're a citizen, they can speak English well enough for us to have a conversation. Some of the people who only speak Spanish often are not eligible to vote also. We do have, in our area, we have voter registration forms, and sometimes we do other kinds of forms in Spanish. And we do try to encourage people who have another language skill to come out, Spanish and French, Arabic. But it hasn't been an overwhelming issue because the people are so dispersed. Like you might in one turf of 50 households have one family where a barrier to English language is a problem.
That's a situation where you would put that piece of information in minivan.
Exactly.
And then the campaign would hopefully send someone who speaks that language back to the door. But I've had a fair number of doors where, the person who answers the door doesn't speak English, but they get their kid to come translate. The kid may be 5 years old, but they'll translate for their parent. It's really quite interesting.
Yeah, that works.
But that's mostly that's the way you handle it, is that you make that entry in the minivan and then the campaign will deal with that on a later date.
Yeah, it seems to me that we've covered most of the general questions and the rest are specific to what your group is going to be doing, Wendy. Do you want to take those?
Sure, yeah, I would be glad to. I think one that just came in was about people giving other people rides to the polls on election day. And there's more than one organization